and welcome to the TechGig Podcast, where we explore the latest innovations shaping the technological landscape. I'm Sukriti, your host, and today we are diving into a game-changing topic: how to transform your business with an AI-first approach. Now, artificial intelligence needs no introduction. We all know that it's a powerful engine driving the tech ecosystem in today's time. But implementing AI isn't just about adopting new technology. It's about strategically integrating it into your operations to unlock real value. So, how can businesses leverage AI to optimize workflows, enhance decision making, and stay ahead in the rapidly evolving market? To help us answer these questions, we have a very special guest today. Folks, please welcome Pavan Nanjundaiah, head of Tredence Studio at Tredence Inc. With deep expertise in AI driven transformation, Pavan has helped organizations leverage AI for operational efficiency, innovation, and long term growth. Right? In today's episode and in this podcast today, we will be actually focusing on to the efficiently, how AI is being used across different departments, the real world stories, the must have skills, and how we should have a right approach when it comes to driving the ROI or investing in AI altogether. So, whether you're a business leader, a tech enthusiast, or someone who's looking to understand the AI revolution, this entire conversation is packed with insights that you would not want to miss. Pavan, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here with me today.
Thank you, Sukriti. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Okay, so Pavan, let's start with the big picture of AI and how it's reshaping industries and how organizations are struggling. Because when it comes to the entire adoption part, we see there are still gaps that exist, right? Many organizations are still struggling from where to start, or maybe are stuck at the mid level. So, what do you suggest? How can business leaders effectively implement an AI first approach across different departments like IT, finance, marketing, or even HR?
Yeah, for sure. So glad we're talking about this because this is a common problem statement that comes to us from our customers. Typically, what I would say is let's talk about AI first, right? What does AI first mean? In my opinion, AI first is essentially using AI enabled insights to take real business decisions. So, is the company at that level of maturity where it's taking decisions based on the insights it's getting from AI driven solutions? That's largely what we can call as AI first. Now, today we are seeing customers in a spectrum here, right? So some are far more advanced compared to others. But largely, when we talk about an AI first approach and what should business leaders do, I would create two categories of discussions here. Number one, the business leader should first look inside the company and understand what are some real pain points that they want to solve, right? Let's take the example to make this discussion real. Let's say I'm running a e-commerce company, right? Which means customers come on my website, make some purchases. Typical problems customers here would face would be a lot of customers are coming on your website, but somehow the conversion is not happening, which means it's not translating in real revenue getting created, right? So if this is a pain point, it's beautiful. You kind of solve the problem halfway because you identified the problem, real problem statement, right? Now think of a Venn diagram construct where two circles are intersecting. On one side is the problem you're trying to solve. On the other side, the second circle is essentially how can AI help? If this is an area where AI has got proven solutions, you would want to bring the two circles because at the intersection is where an AI driven strategy would come out. And what does that mean here? It basically means look at the problems that you are currently facing, identify specific AI driven solutions that could help you to solve that problem. And in order to get there, start small, right? Where you would want to do some small POCs, identify the success of that POC by measuring it with a real business metric. In the case of the e-commerce example, did the conversion really improve just because you tried an AI driven solution? If it did, excellent. Go ahead and now start thinking of scaling it out. If it did not, you may want to explore more and find out if there are other better solutions out there, right? So ultimately, I would say business leaders can effectively implement this AI first strategy by first identifying the problem statement and doing some research around what kind of AI solutions would work for your business. And most importantly, tie the success of this to a real business metric that is going to create an impact in your business. So that's what I would say, Sukriti.
I think that's a very great perspective to start the conversation with Pavan. Now, to substantiate this, can you share some real world examples of how AI driven strategies that have led to meaningful business transformations that we can cite and refer to?
Yeah, for sure. So let's maybe continue with that example just to drive home this point even more, right? If I take the almost a gold standard of e-commerce today, it's probably Amazon.com. If you look at the way Amazon has engineered its website and its mobile app and the experience that customers get, the differentiation is hyper personalization. So essentially, as a good example, when you shop on Amazon.com, the more time you spend on the app or the web page, the better the algorithms understand your shopping pattern. It could be from your past behavior, it could be around the product that you're trying to browse right now. And the recommendation engine just gets better. You might have come to the website to buy, let's say, a white t-shirt. You will probably end up buying a white t-shirt and a blue jeans because you didn't know that you also needed a good blue jeans to go with your white t-shirt, right? So that's a beautiful example. Recently, I was on lenscart.com, another great example. I was looking for some spectacles. They have a beautiful page where you can literally upload your photograph and you can superimpose different spectacle frames on your face, just so that you don't have to literally go to a store or even buy something. It comes to your house, you didn't like it, then you have to go and return it, right? So companies are coming up with innovative AI driven ways to improve the experience on the website. Another big name that's making a lot of news these days is this company called Shein, Chinese company, apparel company. The scale of the business just blows my mind. It was valued at about 100 billion. It's across 150 countries, some 2000 daily SKUs that they churn out. Imagine for a company to operate at that scale, their supply chain and inventory management should be so state of the art, right? Some of the papers that they've published, it basically talks about demand planning, supply planning, not just using traditional signals like historical transaction data, but we're now talking about social media trends. We're now understanding the persona of the customer and trying to understand what is it that this persona or this customer wants and trying to curate the whole experience around that. So these are some real cool ways where companies are implementing AI driven solutions and it's actually adding value to their top line.
All right. Now, with AI adoption accelerating, professionals also need to stay ahead because there's a lot of demand in the market, which I'm sure is not being fulfilled in terms of the supply. What are the essential AI skills that developers and business leaders should focus on to remain competitive in the market?
Yeah, this one I'll tell you is probably my favorite topic because I've got a team of 100 plus engineers in the company, and I constantly address engineers across the spectrum of experience. And this question keeps coming up. Will I stay relevant? What is it that I should do to not just stay relevant but thrive in the AI era? Because if you look at a typical developer's persona, probably coding is like a building block, right? We've all graduated. When we graduated, at least I started off as an engineer where coding was my superpower. If an AI solution is coming and taking away my superpower, how do I stay relevant? That's almost an existential question today in the world. So my suggestion is the following, right? Um, an engineer today, or at least till now, has seen his or her world as here's a problem statement. Most likely, here's the code or the library that I'm going to write, and that is basically going to solve the problem for my employer or solve that business use case. If you have AI driven copilots and code assistants which can do 60-70% of your work today, and based on the industry trends, if it can do 90 to probably even 100% at a later time, what is it that you will do, right? That's the existential question. So my suggestion is, and this is what I tell to all my engineers: elevate yourself from a developer or a coder persona to a problem solver persona. And what I mean by that is this: let's take the example of a data scientist as an example, right? So typically a data scientist in most organizations would get data which is loaded, on which the data scientist would probably build a model, use that to train test models, etc., which means a persona called data engineer has staged the data for you. And as a data scientist, you're probably building models, you're generating insights, and those insights on your right side is consumed by another persona, most likely called as an analyst, business analyst, data analyst in a typical company. If the world of AI is going to eat up the larger value that you're adding, elevate yourself from a data scientist and become a problem solver. That means if 50% of your time is given back to you, look to your left. Don't stop your world at a point where data engineer has loaded the data. Why can't you understand how is the data getting transformed and loaded? And hence you are now elevating yourself to probably a data engineer also, right? On the right side, you gave the insights to a business user. It would really help if you can understand the insights that you gave and what problem did it solve for the company, which means you're now also looking to your right and almost playing a pseudo business analyst role. So the larger point I'm trying to make is everybody should now start looking at the current world as a canvas where you are now positioning yourself as a problem solver and not narrowing down yourself to a certain persona. I usually, when I talk to my teams, I talk about this Japanese concept called Soshin, right? It's a beautiful concept. It basically means you should always have a beginner's mind. And hence, the engineers out there, your world is going to change, you like it or not. And hence, you probably literally have one option, that is to embrace change, have a beginner's mindset, and approach with that mindset, because every day is a new day for you to learn and improve and adapt. Right? So that's basically my message to the engineers out there. Having said that, to the business leader out there, while your engineers and analysts are ramping themselves up, it's your responsibility to set the right foundation for the company. Because when we talk about AI, the core building block or the core secret sauce here is the quality of the data. If the data and the quality of the data is not great, you really cannot expect magical insights to come out at the other end, because your AI is as good as the data that it's taking in. Please focus on the core foundation, which is data governance, data quality. Make sure that your data is in order. Last but not least, business leaders, focus on the larger governance, because these LLMs and AI driven solutions, if not checked properly, can just burn dollars, right? Which means you need to know what is it that you're consuming your AI driven insights for. What is the cost? What is the accuracy? A lot of times, AI driven solutions give hallucinated insights. Do you have the confidence to take business decisions based off of that? Right? Is there a bias in that? Right? What is the latency? So there are so many factors that come into that. So in my view, when we talk about skills, I would park it into two large buckets: the people skills, which is largely speaking to the engineers out there, and the process skills. Right? When I talk about process, that's where the larger data, the governance, the LLM ops, or the ops side of things, that what a business leader should focus on. I think a combination of these two will set the company up for success.
Some very fantastic approach that you've given us, Pawan, I must say. I will move to the next segment where we talk of the build and buy dilemma that we have in AI adoption these days. A major strategic challenge is this that companies are facing, in today's time, whether to build AI solutions in house or maybe buy them from external vendors or providers. How should businesses navigate in this critical decision making?
Yeah. In the world of consulting, there is a standard answer that we usually give, which is, in quotes, it depends, right? But I don't want to give that answer here. I want to give a slightly more realistic answer that we can actually take away as an outcome of this podcast. In my mind, build versus buy is a very relevant question for any business leader out there. You'll have to consider a few parameters, right? What is the AI maturity of the company? Is there a certain time to market as a dependency? Is there a cost boundary? Are there regulatory requirements? Because some of these decisions are clearly based on that. So my suggestion is, if the company is just getting started with this journey, you should definitely consider the buy option, because you still don't have the skills and the knowledge to start building things out there. I would categorize this into a three-step approach, right? Like a typical crawl, walk, run. Prompt engineering is something that you can easily get started. Now there is tons of material out there. Anybody can just understand what does basic prompt engineering mean. So essentially, you've kind of taken one LLM. It could be open source, it could be enterprise, whatnot, right? You take an LLM, you identify a problem statement, and let some of your engineers or even business users with some basic training start playing with the prompts. It's a very easy entry point into the space of AI solutioning. Once you get a feel for, here's kind of a prompt which generated a meaningful output for me, you would want to elevate yourself to a solutioning framework called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. Here, you're not just relying on the prompts that you're passing, you're now bringing your enterprise data to the table. So you're essentially saying, let's say for the purpose of this discussion, you're using ChatGPT as your LLM, right? So there is let's say a GPT-4o, for example, When a GPT-4o is brought together with your enterprise data, and if the solution is built out correctly, you can now ask very contextual questions. You can essentially ask, how can I improve sales in the western part of the country in quarter two, right? Now, if you go and ask this question outright to ChatGPT, it wouldn't know anything about your business and hence the output would not be great. But in a decently built solution, because it has access to your data, it'll give you very meaningful insights. And this is a clear elevation from the basic prompt engineering. Let's say the crawl and walk is done and now you're feeling fairly confident. You can now get into the run phase where you're almost thinking build option, because you've identified the boundaries of an out of the box solution, and hence you probably have identified a buy solution could only do so much. In this case, the buy being an out of the box LLM, like let's say GPT, as an example, right? What would a build potentially look like? Because RAG essentially was a build, but with a minor complexity. The next elevation is you could actually think of building your own small language model, which means you've taken an open source model, you've hosted it in house, you have identified the proprietary data that you have. Again, going back to the earlier point, which is if you have rich data, large data volumes, relevant data volumes, you can actually bring your own data and fine tune an LLM for you. The beauty of this, and again, if done right, is that this LLM can work like a charm because it knows full context about your business. You can now think of unlocking more business insights where, let's say, a developer in your company is using relevant or is getting relevant code suggestions, and hence the developer's productivity is improving. An analyst in your company is now able to ask meaningful questions and get ad hoc insights as an output, which means this analyst is now less dependent on a report developer or an engineer building reports, and this analyst is kind of doing self-serve analysis. A business user can literally take business decisions, right? So in summary, my view is, look at those core tenets: cost, accuracy, latency, regulatory requirements, and initially understand what is it that you want to do. And if all these options are evaluated and if a basic blank canvas is painted, start with build, but at every stage, keep checking and keep upgrading yourself. And if it makes sense, absolutely, build option is a valid option for a lot of companies.
All right. So, Pavan, with these, substantiation of the business leaders and the decision making, I would also want to touch base onto how these Fortune 100 companies are sustaining the AI-driven innovation. Some of the most innovative AI applications come from these companies that we're talking about, the Fortune 100 companies. How are these industry giants leveraging the machine learning to sustain innovation and stay ahead in this competitive market?
Yeah. See, in my mind, you call it machine learning, data science, or even AI for now. If you have to maintain your lead, it's almost existential at this point, right? So it's literally existential. Else, you will probably fall behind. See, I'll give you some specific examples, right? Let's take let's say retail as an example. Companies like Walmart, Amazon, they are at the cutting edge of some of these solutions, and it's literally helping them to increase their top line quarter over quarter, right? So things like better supply chain management, better customer analytics, better marketing spend analytics. So retailers like Amazon, Walmart are at the forefront. Let's talk big tech. Big tech companies like Google, Microsoft. We all know they are building their own large language models, and it's not just that. Now big tech is actually competing in the world of quantum, right? Quantum is literally going to be the next leap here, because compute essentially will become a blocker at some point, and hence if we have to continue to make giant leaps in the space of AI, people have to understand how to meaningfully use the quantum landscape, and hence big tech companies are already playing there. If you take, let's say, financial companies, large financial services companies like, let's say, a JP Morgan or a Bank of America, they are literally at the cutting edge of tracking, let's say, real-time fraud detection, right? End of the day, I as a customer should feel safe with my banker, and that will only happen if services like these are provided. So real-time fraud detection is a beautiful use case where AI driven solutions are adding meaningful value. If I take, let's say, a healthcare as an example, take United Healthcare, right? So with computer vision based diagnosis of anomalies in the patient data, these guys have taken the solutioning to the next level. The patterns that an AI driven solution can identify in lab reports in some cases is actually beating the specialist, right? The way a specialist could diagnose some of the issues in largely in diagnosing a certain disease. Clearly AI driven solutions are already at that point where they're showing that they can do a far better job. So I would say across the board, across industries, Fortune 100 companies are literally staying at the top of these AI ML driven solutions to create a differentiations for them in the market.
All right, Pawan, this has been such a fantastic session, and so many insightful pointers you've brought in this conversation. Before we wrap up, what's your final piece of advice for companies looking to successfully implement the AI-driven transformation?
Yeah, my I've got 2 points. Number one, start small, evaluate, and only then go to production, right? Because there's a lot of buzz around AI. So as a business leader, please distill signal from noise. It's critical you do that. Number two, business leaders, have what's your north star or what is your business metric? If you can visibly see that a certain business metric is getting impacted, only then try and go all in on that. And for my engineering friends out there, you have to have that beginner's mindset. Your world is going to change, you like it or not, and hence embrace the change, understand what is required. The foundational skills of core computer science programming is not going to die out. So focus on your basics, become a problem solver, and I think that's what you will need for future.
All right, now that's a wrap on today's episode. Pawan, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise. And to our listeners, if you found this conversation valuable, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. We'll be back with more insightful discussions in AI, business innovation, and digital transformation. Until next time, this is Sukriti. Thanks signing off. Stay curious and keep innovating. Thank you. Thank you, Pawan, once again.